I never planned on meeting anyone new, let alone someone who would shift my world in such an unexpected way. My life had settled into a quiet routine, one that suited me most days. I'm 53, divorced for over a decade, and I spend my time shuffling between my job at the local library and my cozy little home. Weekends are usually reserved for tending to my small garden, chatting with my grown kids on the phone, or a slow, relaxing trip to the grocery. It was on one of those grocery runs that I met him, Andrew, a tall young man with bright eyes and an energy about him that was hard to ignore. I was reaching for a jar of marinara sauce when he appeared beside me, grabbing the same brand. We both laughed, caught off guard by the silly coincidence, and for a moment, I forgot my age, my years of routine, and just enjoyed the unexpected interaction. Guess we both have great taste, he joked, flashing a smile that stayed with me long after After that, I found myself noticing him more often, just by chance. He seemed to be on the same grocery schedule as I was, and soon, a simple nod turned into conversations about pasta recipes and our favorite foods. I remember thinking he was charming and easy to talk to, with a sincerity that felt rare. But that's all I allowed myself to feel. It was harmless, I told myself, just a little pleasure in the everyday. Looking back, though, I know that those small interactions were laying the foundation for something deeper. After that first encounter, our paths kept crossing. I wondered if maybe he timed his grocery runs the same as mine. But I quickly dismissed the idea. It was just a coincidence, right? Yet each time I saw Andrew in the aisles, my heart beat a little faster. And each time he'd strike up a conversation, it was like a spark had been lit, pulling me from my quiet life into something a bit warmer, a bit more alive. Our talks gradually grew from light-hearted food chat to conversations that surprised me. We'd linger by the produce section discussing books, movies, even old family recipes. He shared stories about his mother's cooking, and I'd catch myself sharing little pieces of my life in return, snippets I hadn't thought about in years. He listened, truly listened, in a way that made me feel seen. One Saturday, after a quick laugh about our mutual lack of cooking skills, Andrew invited me for coffee at the cafe just across the parking lot. I was taken aback, not knowing if this was appropriate, if this crossed a line. But his smile was warm, his invitation so casual, so I agreed, telling myself it was just a friendly cup of coffee. That hour flew by in what felt like minutes. He shared tales of his job, his friends, even his dreams for the future. And somewhere along the way, I let my guard down. I didn't feel like a woman in her 50s. I felt simply like a woman enjoying someone's company. By the end of our coffee, we had fallen into an easy rhythm, one that I had been missing without even realizing it. After that, coffee turned into a weekly ritual. It became a little anchor in my routine, something to look forward to, and I noticed the days didn't feel as lonely. Andrew's laughter and sincerity brought lightness to my life, and I felt a spark of joy I hadn't known in years. I told myself it was just a friendship, that it was enough. But part of me, deep down, wondered where this connection was leading me, that it was during one of those coffee dates, that I felt something shift inside me. A feeling that made me pause mid-laugh as I watched him across the table. Andrew had been telling a story about a hiking trip gone wrong, complete with a grand tumble down a hill and a torn backpack. He was animated, eyes shining with that unfiltered excitement I found so refreshing. And right in the middle of his laughter, something stirred in me. Something unexpected, something deeper. I tried to brush it off, dismissing it as a fleeting feeling, just the result of having let someone into my life after so long. But as I watched him, his genuine smile, his warm gaze, I realized that my heart was racing, and not in a way that felt familiar. It wasn't the comfort of an old friend, or the fondness I'd felt for casual acquaintances over the years. No, this was something different, something more. The realization hit me like a wave. I was attracted to him, not just to his kindness or his humor, but to him as a person, his presence, his energy. I could feel my cheeks flush, and I quickly looked away, fumbling with my coffee cup to hide the emotions that were now swirling in me, threatening to spill over. What was I doing? He was younger. By how much I wasn't even sure, but younger enough that it made my heart beat faster for all the wrong reasons. And yet there was no denying the way he made me feel. After years of convincing myself that love, or even attraction, wasn't something I'd feel again, this felt overwhelming. Frightening even. I hadn't signed up for this. I was supposed to be the wise, mature one, above such silly flutters and nerves. But there I was, a woman in her 50s, blushing like a schoolgirl because of a man who had become more than just a friend. And as we walked to our cars that afternoon, his laughter echoing in my ears, I realized that there was no going back. I had feelings for him. Feelings that were impossible to ignore. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions I hadn't felt in years: joy, fear, excitement, and a nagging sense of guilt. My mind kept racing through all the questions I'd tried to avoid. What would people say? What would my children think? It was hard enough to explain it to myself, let alone justify it to others. Every time we met, I found myself caught between two voices in my head. One told me that this was wrong, that I was acting foolishly, letting my heart get tangled up in something that society would never accept. The other voice, softer but no less insistent, whispered that I deserved happiness, that life was too short to let such moments pass by. I kept returning to Andrew's presence, like a moth drawn to a flame, knowing the risks but unable to resist. The age gap was undeniable, of course, but every time I was with him, it felt like it dissolved, leaving just the two of us, connecting in ways that felt strangely effortless. When he looked at me, I saw a respect and admiration that seemed to transcend my insecurities about my age or my appearance. His interest felt genuine, and with him, I didn't feel old. I felt alive, as if the years had melted away. But in the quiet of the night, doubt would creep back in. I'd lie awake, going over every word, every laugh we'd shared, questioning if I was reading too much into it, if he could possibly feel the same way. I wanted to believe that this wasn't just my imagination, that the way he looked at me, the way he lingered in conversations, meant something more. And yet I was terrified. I was scared of rejection, yes, but more so of opening my heart again, of risking the vulnerability I'd shielded myself from for so long. I felt as if I were walking a tightrope between fear and desire, each step uncertain but thrilling. Part of me wanted to run, to end this friendship before I let my heart wander too far. But each time I tried to convince myself to pull away, I'd see his face, his smile, his unguarded laughter, and the walls I'd built around myself seemed to crumble a little more. I didn't know where this journey would lead, but I knew I wasn't ready to give up on it. As the weeks passed, the connection between Andrew and me deepened, each coffee date layered with more laughter and more meaning. Yet the internal battle continued, simmering just beneath the surface. I wanted to share more of my world with him, but the fear of crossing an unspoken boundary loomed large. Then, one evening as I sat on my patio watching the sun dip below the horizon, I had an idea that filled me with both excitement and dread. What if I invited him over? A casual dinner, I told myself. Something simple. But in my heart, I knew it was more than just a meal. It felt like a turning point, a leap into unknown territory, where I'd either solidify our bond or risk losing him altogether. I spent the next few days running through every scenario in my mind. What if he came over and realized how much older I was? What if he didn't find me attractive in the intimacy of my home? But the thought of spending a more personal evening together, away from the watchful eyes of the grocery store and the cafe, ignited a flicker of hope in me. I imagined cooking his favorite pasta, the way his eyes would light up with delight, and for the first time in years, I felt a thrill of anticipation that drowned out my fears. After much internal debate, I finally sent him a message, inviting him over for dinner on Saturday. My heart raced as I hit send, and I immediately felt a mix of relief and panic. I paced my kitchen, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life, or the best decision in years. When Andrew replied with a quick, enthusiastic "I'd love to," I felt a rush of warmth wash over me. But alongside that warmth was a fresh wave of anxiety. I spent the following days cleaning my home, picking out the perfect ingredients, and even trying to decide what to wear. I wanted to look good, to feel good, but I also needed to remind myself that this was about sharing a moment, not just about appearances. Saturday arrived, and the hours crept by slowly. As the evening approached, I felt butterflies fluttering in my stomach. The doorbell rang, and my heart leaped. There he was, a charming smile lighting up his face, holding a small bouquet of flowers that made my heart swell. "Thought I'd bring a little something for my lovely host," he said. And just like that, all my worries momentarily faded away. The warmth in his voice made me feel both welcomed and cherished, igniting a spark of courage I didn't know I had. I knew then that no matter what happened, I was ready to embrace whatever unfolded between us. As Andrew stepped inside my home, I could feel the atmosphere shift, a charge of energy that sparked the moment he crossed the threshold. The living room was cozy, filled with the aroma of garlic sautéing in olive oil. I had lit a few candles, creating a soft, inviting glow that wrapped around us like a warm embrace. My heart raced with anticipation, but I also felt a comforting sense of familiarity that eased my nerves. We settled into the kitchen, and I motioned for him to take a seat at the counter while I stirred the sauce. We chatted about everything and nothing, but as he leaned in, listening intently, I could feel an intimacy building that made the world outside my walls fade away. It was different from our coffee chats, more personal, more real. His presence filled the space, igniting a warmth that sent butterflies swirling in my stomach. As dinner progressed, we shared stories and laughter over the pasta I had prepared. Each smile, each glance lingered a moment longer than before, and I could feel the tension rising in the air between us. When he reached over to refill my glass, our fingers brushed, and the simple contact sent a thrill coursing through me. I looked up to find him watching me, his expression soft, his gaze steady. There was a moment when we both paused, the laughter falling silent, and the atmosphere shifted. It was as if the world outside had disappeared entirely, leaving just the two of us suspended in time. I could see it in his eyes, the understanding, the connection, and something more profound that made my heart skip a beat. Without thinking, I leaned closer, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm really glad you're here," I whispered, and he smiled, his eyes sparkling with something I couldn't quite name. "I am too. It feels nice," he replied, his voice low and sincere. Then, in a moment that felt both electrifying and surreal, Andrew reached out and brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. The soft touch of his fingers against my skin sent shivers down my spine. It was such a simple gesture, yet it felt charged with emotion, a silent acknowledgement of the connection we shared. My breath caught in my throat, and I could see the same realization dawning in his eyes. In that instant, the boundaries I had worried about seemed to blur, and all I could think about was how much I wanted to close the distance between us. It was a leap into uncharted territory, but the thought of exploring it with him filled me with an exhilarating mix of excitement and longing. As the evening unfolded, the walls I had carefully constructed began to dissolve, layer by layer. Our conversation flowed more freely, weaving between laughter and shared stories, creating a tapestry of connection that wrapped around us like a warm blanket. Each passing moment felt precious, and I realized how deeply I craved this connection with him. Over dessert, rich chocolate cake that we devoured with delight, our eyes locked, and suddenly the laughter faded. There was a weight in the air, an unspoken understanding that we were both feeling something profound, something that defied the norms and expectations I had held onto for so long. "Can I ask you something?" Andrew's voice broke the silence, drawing me back from my thoughts. I nodded, curious but cautious. "How do you feel about age?" I took a breath, knowing the question hung heavy between us. "It's complicated," I admitted, my heart racing. "I've always thought age was just a number, but society has a way of making it feel like a barrier." He nodded, his expression serious yet understanding. "I get that. But when I'm with you, I don't see age. I see someone I connect with on so many levels. You make me feel." He paused, searching for the right words. "You make me feel alive." My heart swelled at his honesty. "I feel that too, but it's hard to ignore the world around us. I'm scared of what people will think," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared of what this means for both of us." Andrew reached across the table, his hand covering mine, grounding me in the moment. "We can't control what others think. All we can do is be true to ourselves and what we feel. I don't want to lose us over fear." His words struck a chord deep within me. For so long, I had let fear dictate my choices, holding me back from embracing happiness. But sitting there with him, I felt the weight of my fears begin to lift. Yes, there would be challenges, but wasn't love worth the risk? Wasn't it worth fighting for? No matter how unconventional it might seem? As we talked late into the night, I began to reflect on the nature of love itself. I realized that it doesn't adhere to age or societal expectations. It simply exists in the spaces we create with others. Andrew had brought joy back into my life, reminding me that love could still bloom, even when it seemed unlikely. This was a new chapter, one that challenged me to let go of my doubts and embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. I found myself smiling at him, my heart full, knowing that whatever the future held, I was ready to face it. Together, we were carving out a path that was uniquely ours, one where age was nothing but a detail in a beautiful story waiting to unfold. As the night deepened, Andrew and I found ourselves enveloped in a cocoon of shared stories, laughter, and an undeniable connection that felt both exhilarating and transformative. When the last remnants of dessert had been cleared away and the candles had burned low, I realized how much I had opened up to him, not just in conversation but in my heart. "Thank you for tonight," Andrew said, his voice soft and sincere. "I had an incredible time." I smiled, warmth flooding my chest. So did I. It's been a long time since I felt this way about someone. There was a vulnerability in my admission that I hadn't anticipated, but it felt liberating. His eyes sparkled as he leaned in closer, a gesture that sent my heart racing again. "I don't want this to end," he said, the weight of his words settling around us. "I want to explore where this connection takes us, no matter the obstacles." In that moment, I understood something profound. Love doesn't conform to societal norms or expectations. It exists outside of time and age. It blooms in the most unexpected places, often when we least expect it, just as it had for us. I thought of all the doubts and fears that had plagued me in the weeks leading up to this evening, and I felt a shift within myself, a willingness to embrace this new chapter with an open heart. As we stood by the door, preparing to say goodbye, I knew I was stepping into a new realm of possibilities. I had spent too many years afraid to embrace my desires, afraid to pursue happiness for fear of judgment. But now, standing here, I felt empowered. This wasn't just about me or my age. It was about us, about two souls finding solace and joy in one another. "I've learned that love has no age," I said, my voice steady and filled with conviction. "It's about connection, understanding, and the joy of being together. I want to embrace that regardless of what others might think." Andrew smiled, a look of admiration crossing his face. "I feel the same way. Let's not let anything hold us back. We deserve this, whatever it may become." As he stepped out into the night, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. My heart was open, and I was ready to explore the possibilities that lay ahead, no matter how unconventional they might seem. Love, I realized, was worth every risk, every challenge. And as I closed the door behind him, I knew that I was stepping into a new phase of my life, one filled with hope, laughter, and the promise of love that transcended age. I would encourage anyone, regardless of their circumstances, to embrace their desires, to pursue happiness fiercely, and to remember that love can thrive at any stage of life. After all, it is never too late to open your heart and let love in.